Hey, Hunters, Halozu here for a very special video, talking about One D&D again. This is not looking over any specific things in the Unearthed Arcanas, so this is just a slideshow. So we're back in PowerPoint. Well, Google Slides technically, but it's still PowerPoint. So this is my subclass suggestions. So basically I wanted to do kind of a collective video talking about the subclasses and which ones I think should be cut from One D&D and which should be brought in. So, and this is going to keep to the 4 subclasses per class. As much as I would like to add more, for example, add all the player's handbook, specifically Player's Handbook, Domains, and Schools of Magic for the Cleric and Wizard, respectively, plus Death Domain, which was in the DMG, but basically an honorary PHB class, I'd say, which is relevant later. But let's begin with kind of a philosophy behind my choices, so you understand this is my thoughts, and remember, this is my opinion, so I will do stuff mostly because I want it done. Not necessarily because, but, there's a standard I'll hold myself to. For one, older subclasses should take priority over the newer ones. So, pretty much anything Ravnica forward, aka anything that was in Tasha's and forward, that is all going to be a kind of area that I'm not going to touch on. And it kind of goes into this. The subclasses that need reworking the most should be included in the 2024 PHB, which basically means that, or actually the last one too, there shouldn't be straight reprints from Tasha's and forward since they're so new. So basically the idea is that a subclass, it should be one that's older rather than newer, which means PHB subclasses have priority number 1, which is what they've done, as there's no the only ones that are missing are that are in the player's handbook are 3 cleric domains and the other 4 wizard schools, where there's literally no room for them left, so they're kind of left out. And then Death Domain's also left out since it was DMG, not Player's Handbook, so it's not one of the 4 for Cleric. And then there's one other that's kind of a weird case, but Oathbreaker was DMG, but it's kind of first stuff, but oh well. And also, to top it off, new subclasses shouldn't be added yet unless they have a good reason to be included. Which is basically just a thing of, I don't think new subclasses should be done yet, for the most part. There's one that I let get away, but I will explain why. And if you've seen previous 1D&D stuff, you'll probably know most of this. So, yeah, this is kind of the philosophy that's going behind it all. So, I want older subclasses. I don't want straight reprints at all. That is my number one thing. Like, if I was going to put numbers, this 4th one would be my number 1, where it's no straight reprints from Tasha's and forward. They literally just got printed. They are relatively recent ones. They don't need to show up here. Mostly because it's taking up space that could be a needed update that's pushed back in favor of reprinting a subclass that we don't need reprinted. Nobody cares if you reprint something from Tasha's with no changes. People care about stuff that is getting updated. that's been some of the most exciting stuff. Nobody cares, oh, hey, this is getting reprinted. So, and the new stuff, it's exciting, but I'd rather those get more time. And once again, letting other subclasses that have needed the reworks get reworked. And in 3 out of 4 cases, that's probably for the best. Because they were pretty rough. So let's begin with the Barbarian. So we're going to go in alphabetical order, not in order of playtest. So we've already got all the playtests. Literally, the day I recorded this is the day I did the survey for this, and also why I didn't do this for so long, but oh well. But with the Barbarian, we have Path of the Berserker, and also as a rule, the left is what we currently have, the right is what I'm doing as my suggestions. So on the left here, we have Path of the Berserker, World Tree, which is the new one, Wildheart, which is just Totem Warrior, and Zealot. On the left, or the right here, we have Berserker, Wild Magic, Wildheart, and Zealot. So the thing is that World Tree is the new one, so naturally it's one that I am not the biggest fan of including. But you'll also notice this is a Tasha's subclass. What's it doing here, even though I said I didn't prioritize them? Well, Wild Magic is a bit different because it is an absolute mess, rules as written. Because the biggest problem it faces is that it just doesn't scale at all with its abilities. So it doesn't get anything new, or rather, its abilities don't upgrade. So from the start of the game to the end, your abilities do the same thing. Every time you rage, it's just D6 damage or something. And the first option needs a total rework, in my opinion, to where it's something that you can have repeatable so that it's actually balanced with everything else, because right now it's pretty bad when you roll a 1 because that's it. You're just a normal barbarian for the rest of your rage. So it really does suck when you get it, where it's like, you had this ability that triggered on rage, but it doesn't do anything else. And it's not like Wild Magic Sorcerer, where their Wild Magic stuff has some absolutely ridiculous things that happen. Where there's some pretty powerful stuff. These are all very lackluster. And because they don't scale, it's very hard to suggest ever using them, because it's kind of like, it's one in that, like, it's fun at first, but it scales horribly. Where I've had my friend Jay, he was playing one and then actually at late levels said, you know what, I'm going to reroll my character because I'm just not having fun with it, because it just doesn't do anything. And that is a general barbarian problem, but Wild Magic has it the worst of anyone. The rest, they're fine. Like, Berserker and Wildheart are the mainstays. Zealot is a returning one from Xanathar's that was easily the worst of them, so it's, it's a welcome addition. As much as I want Storm Herald, I do have to admit, Wild Magic it's not in a good place. So, on to Bard. So, on the left we have College of Dance, Glamour, Lore, and Valor. On the right we have Glamour, Lore, Whispers, and Valor. So, the College of Dance is very weird and awkward, where it kind of feels like they get a better scaling attack, unarmed attack than Monk, but they don't have extra attacks. They have a straight up worse martial arts. It's a very weird one, and I feel like a lot like World Tree, actually, this needs a lot more time in development. So delaying it would actually be a lot better, where it's like, okay, let's focus more on making this actually fun and interesting, and less like, oh, you have a unarmed attack, but there's not a lot of support for it, and there's a lot of weird stuff going on with how it scales and everything. And the reason I chose Whispers, as much as I want Swords updated, I think Whispers also needs an update badly. And the other reason I chose it is because it's kind of a sister college to Glamour. So I thought, it would be nice if it's still the sister college to Glamour, but it gets to have some different abilities. It gets to move away from being weapon-based for whatever reason with their alt Bardic Inspiration. That's just a weird sneak attack. And basically make it a better subclass. While Swords is saved for a bit later, since we already have Valor. And another note, this is one of the only 3 not subclass selection things I'll mention. Bard really needs a rework to how their subclasses work and progress. Specifically, they need a 4th feature, because they were actually one of the 2 classes that had one of the most substantial benefits when they transferred over to the standardized subclass progression, where you got 4 levels of features rather than 3, which for lore, it's a godsend. It's like, yes, more stuff for their subclass when they are so neglected in that regard. So I do strongly believe that this class does need some reworking to how their subclasses progress. And they're one of the only 2 where I have to say, I'm sorry, Wizards, screw backwards compatibility. Please change this. It needs an update bad. And it's one of the 2 that needs some changing. And I think we all know the other. But moving forward, Cleric, it has an asterisk here because no changes. Life, Light, Trickery, War. Life, Light, Trickery, War. They're all PHB classes, so I'm fine having them all. Even if some of the others need some tweaking as well, I think it's a good list. It works. Druid. We have Circle of Land, Moon, Sea, which is the new one, and Stars. Over here we have Dreams, Land, Moon, and the Sea. So, first off with the Sea, the reason I kept it is actually due to another change, where Circle of the Land, they changed it to be a bit different than what it is currently, where instead of choosing one of 8 options, you now choose one of 4, but it's every long rest, if I remember correctly. So you get a lot more versatility, but there's only 4 options, and they're all land-based. So they split off the coast option and made a whole new circle dedicated to the water. So I will give Sea a pass here. It does need some reworking, where currently it's got a 10-foot aura, kind of like Spores does, and I think it should move away from that. But I do like the idea of having a dedicated ocean-themed druid, especially with Circle of the Land losing the coast build. So, which I think honestly kind of struggles to be part of the same class or subclass, where it does kind of want some other stuff that land just can't have on its own. So having it split off is a good idea, and that's why it's kind of the one exception where it's not a totally new build. It's an option that's being fleshed out fully and splitting off from another subclass. Whereas Circle of Dreams, it's included over Stars because Stars was completely unchanged. Like, nothing was different. So it's kind of just there taking a slot. that is better served by Dreams. And as to why Dreams is the one selected, well, quite frankly, it is the worst Druid subclass of them all right now. And it always kind of was, where it's just got nothing special going for it. And it's also the only one with no clear direction for where to go with wild shape. So having it here, it's like it's a chance to give it its own wild shape use besides the default 2 now. And also, Circle of the Shepherd doesn't need that as much, since Wild Companion does actually fit with their build a lot better than Wild Shape or Wild Companion for Dreams. So I'm giving Dreams the slot here mostly because it needs the update most, and it does mechanically make sense with how they're adding ways to use Wild Shape. It's the one that benefits the most from that update, besides Circle the Land, where Circle the Moon, it used Wild Shape, but better already, so doesn't really need to change there. And then Circle of the Shepherd has a clear direction to go, which I also hope it ends up being, hey, Wild Companion? And you know how Circle of the Moon treats Wild Shape? Circle of the Shepherd does that for Wild Companion. So they make it really good. Whereas Circle of the Dreams, it just gets something new that, hey, let's mess around with stuff more. Fighter! So on the left we have Battlemaster, Brawler, Champion, Eldritch Knight. On the right we have Arcane Archer, Battlemaster, Cavalier, and Eldritch Knight. I will give an asterisk to there is no way in heck they're removing Champion at this point, unfortunately. As much as I hate the subclass, and I will admit this is the most personal choice of screw Champion, kill it with fire, especially now that it's disgustingly broken with how Vex and Studied Attacks works together. Ugh, it's despicable. But Brawler being swapped for Arcane Archer. Brawler, it's a cool idea, but it does need more time in the oven, especially since I do have to say they should just... Part of Improvised Expert should just be implemented into Weapon Mastery in general, because they actually make Weapon Mastery fun. Where it's like, oh yeah, you just have options to choose at any time you're using an improvised weapon. You just choose the mastery. It's just so much fun. It's like, this is how it's meant to be played. Whereas Arcane Archer, well, yeah, no, they need changes. They are easily my top 3. Where in the survey I even said, this is one of my top 3 subclasses to get reworked. Besides 2 more we'll mention later. But yeah, Arcane Archer, it needs updating bad. Though I will admit, Brawler is one of the few I would actually... It's the other new subclass I would be fine if they kept it. Mostly because it's just a cool and fun build, though I think it could use more time in the oven. Whereas Arcane Archer, its problem is obvious. They need more Arcane Shot uses. And probably need some tweaking to the Arcane Shots to make some of them actually worth it. And then Cavalier for Champion. This is mostly to add a new simple option. And I think Cavalier actually makes for a really good simple option, where it's like, you don't add much to the gameplay. You attack people. Now they have a penalty to attack your allies. Simple. And, it's simple, but it's not boring. You're constantly having to think, okay, how can I maximize my defensive capabilities while protecting my allies? And it actually offers a newer party a really good option where it's like, hey, you can make your allies' time easier as well, where it's not just easy for you, it's adding a lot more stuff for your allies to take advantage of as well, where you're able to keep enemies' attention better and help your party a lot more than a champion can with their boring extra crits and stuff that I absolutely despise. Monk! Also note, I refuse to use the warrior of blank terminology. Screw it. Sticking with Way of Blank. But on the left, we have Way of Mercy, Shadow, 4 elements, and Open Hand. On the right, we have Kensei, Shadow, 4 elements, Open Hand. Kensei should come as no surprises here. It is one of the three subclasses that needs rework the most. Because right now, it doesn't even work like it should. Where instead of encouraging you to use your weapon, it encourages you to not use your weapon. Because that's what you want to do, right? Yeah, no. Also, Way of Mercy was unchanged, so it's automatically off. We don't need it reprinted. But Kensei, yeah, it really needs to change. Like, it's kind of lackluster Sun Soul can be, and how Drunken Master's kind of meh. Kensei, oh, poor Kensei. They really need it. Like, with beyond a shadow of a doubt, they've needed it. Because it launched not really doing what it's supposed to do. And it doesn't help that it's a frickin' monk. So, yeah, Kensei, oh boy, that could use an update. Like, no tomorrow. And I'm really sad they didn't have it as one of the 4 initially. And this one kind of comes off as one of the most lazy, where it's like, Wizards, there's a subclass that has desperately needed attention, and it's not here. What the crazes? Then Paladin. So on the left, we have Devotion, Glory, Ancients, and Vengeance. On the right, we have Devotion, Oathbreaker, Ancients, and Vengeance. So I put an asterisk here where Oathbreaker, I include it here because it is kind of the 4th Player's Handbook class, where it was in the Dungeon Master's Guide, so it's one of the first 2 subclasses added to the game after the Player's Handbook, but it wasn't added in place of Oath of Glory, which I think kind of, it doesn't feel right to me. So I decided, okay, I'll list it here. But there is the asterisk. And that Oath of Glory is actually changed for a reason. So, because it uses Divine Smite and cares about it, it was changed here to make it work a slightly different way. So that's why it was in One D&D, because Divine Smite is changing, so Oath of Glory was changing. So here, I wouldn't mind if Oath of Glory stayed around because of that. Though I also think it's not the biggest necessity, and I would like to see a renamed Oathbreaker. And that's another reason it has an asterisk, is because it's one of the 2 I would like to see renamed. Mostly because Oathbreaker, it's not Oath of Blank. And my suggestion is Oath of Shadows, which is one I've planned to use for 5.5, but that's a whole other project that we're not going to go into right now. But it is definitely one that it's like, yeah, it could use an update. It's kind of the 4th Player's Handbook class, so I would like to see it, alongside the other 3, because it was part of the initial content. But Oath of Glory, I understand why it was put in there, and it was changed, unlike every other Tasha's subclass. Because I think it still is the only one that got changed, too, which is even more insulting. For reasons we'll talk about in a moment. Ranger on the left, Beastmaster, Fey Wanderer, Gloomstalker, Hunter. On the right, Beastmaster, Gloomstalker, Hunter, Monster Slayer. So, Fey Wanderer, it's a touchless subclass and was unchanged. Monster Slayer. This one's kind of awkward because, yeah, it's one of the two that, as much as I'd like to see Horizon Walker changed as well, due to the fact that it's kind of lackluster as well, I have Monster Slayer here mostly because it really does suffer from a problem that I'd say Ranger in general suffers from, which is, even in 1D&D, it's held back by how bad they made it at launch. So Monster Slayer kind of ends up being in an awkward position where the way they designed it was before even favored foe was a thing or a thought. So having a way of marking a target to hunt down and kill, it made sense for them. And mechanically, you don't have anything like that at the moment. But now it's really aged poorly where you have multiple ways of marking a foe to track them down and kill them, basically. So that is why Monster Slayer is here, because it needs a rework, because it just doesn't make sense with the current mechanics where Hunter's Mark is now baseline, so their ability doesn't really make sense anymore because it's kind of playing into the same idea that Hunter's Mark was, so there's no need for it anymore, and it should be reworked as a result. Rogue on the left, Arcane Trickster, Assassin, Swashbuckler, Thief. On the right, Arcane Trickster, Assassin, Inquisitive, and Thief. So, Swashbuckler, it is a Xanathar subclass, but I will say, it's the one that needs changes the least. Like, any other Xanathar subclass, I would have said, yes, this needs changes. I had to cough real quick and get a drink. But, yeah. Swashbuckler, it doesn't need changes that much. It's actually the best mechanically of the four. With the caveat that Inquisitive used to be good, but then a certain thing called steady aim happened. And it kind of made Inquisitive pointless. Because the whole idea with Inquisitive was you can basically mark a target and you always have sneak attack on them. The problem is that with Cunning Aim, you don't need that. All Inquisitive does now is basically say, oh yeah, you get sneak attack without having to stand in place. Which would be really nice if Scout did that instead. But anyway, Inquisitive, it needs a rework mostly because with Cunning Aim, it doesn't really make sense anymore. Thus, it needs some tweaking to make it work in a world alongside Cunning Aim to make it play a bit better and play nicer with it. Being one of the others that what made it good originally doesn't really play as well anymore, and it doesn't make sense in the current game. Thus, it needs reworking more in order to make it work better, since there's new mechanics that make it that made it less relevant. Also, Rogue is the other class that needs some changes to how their subclasses work, specifically moving their second subclass features from 9th to at least 7th, if not 6th. Because let's be honest, nobody likes waiting till 9th level for them. It sucks. Especially when no one else waits that long. Because I think the second longest is Fighter at 7th. And it's like, yeah. You spend a whole 2 more levels that are pretty long waiting for it, and yeah. It's not great when you're only on the initial features. So, yeah, that one needs some changes. Sorcerer. On the left, we have Aberrant Sorcery, Clockwork Sorcery, Dragon Sorcery, Wild Magic Sorcery. And then on the right, Dragon Sorcery, Shadow Sorcery, Storm Sorcery, and Wild Magic Sorcery. So, yeah. This is the most egregious use of Tasha's reprints there is. Because they reprinted 2 with no changes. When 1, Clockwork, could actually benefit from changes. Because I don't know why they ever added Alarm. Because it sucks. Like, I guess their idea is, it's like, oh, it's an alarm clock. Which, I get that, but I really want Shield of Faith. And I can't get it. Because how the subclass works says, oh yeah, you can't have it. So I would like if they had at least made it where it's like, yeah, replace Alarm with Shield of Faith. Boom. Infinitely better. Especially at what it's supposed to be doing, which is, yeah, you're a support caster who doesn't heal. You support your allies in other ways. And Shield of Faith would be going a long way into making that actually function mechanically, while also playing into what they are thematically, with that defensive aspect built up. But, on the other hand, Shadow and Storm... Shadow, it's kind of listed as a 4th one. And this could be replaced with Clockwork, but I put Shadow here because it also really needs some updating, similar to Storm, where... And this is a problem that the UA doesn't address yet, which is Aberrant Sorcery, Clockwork Sorcery, and Lunar Sorcery are all very overpowered right now because you get so many extra spells, Lunar being the most absurd in that regard. Thus, I believe that there needs to be some reworking to implement that to the previous subclasses. So that's why Shadow is here, with Divine Soul being excluded, because it's the one that worries the least, because they already get an extra spell, and they have a second spell list to choose from, so they need it less, as they have a lot of versatility that they get from having 2 spell lists worth of spells. That is absolutely insane, because you get the best healing and AoE damage. So yeah, that's a fun combination. But Shadow is there because it needs the update. Storm, though. Boy, oh boy, is this a doozy. Because, yeah, Storm and Dragon, actually. They exist in this weird position where I feel like they're doing the opposite of what they should be. Because Dragon, currently, wants to be more of a ranged caster. But they have the defensive buff that, at first level, would suggest they want to be up close and personal more. But nothing else supports that. Storm, their first level feature, suggests being more of a skirmisher. And because you don't have any defensive buffs, you assume, oh yeah, they're a ranged skirmisher, right? Wrong. They want to be up close and personal, with no defensive buffs whatsoever. Because that's fun, right, players? When you have a D6 in particular? Yeah, no. Screw that. So I have it here mostly because, A, it's a Xanathar subclass, doesn't have extra spells, and kind of needs it to compete with these 2 monsters, and Lunar as well, the true monster. But also to fix it and make it a ranged skirmisher. Screw this, close to mid-range caster. Let it be a ranged skirmisher. let them play from afar. And Dragon, let them be up close. Because if you haven't already seen my thoughts on the One D&D Sorcerer from the recent UA, Dragon, they regressed in my opinion. It's bad. It's like they already had trouble transitioning from being first level subclass to third level, and now they've just gone backwards. Ugh. And now on to the Warlock. So on the left we have Archfey, Celestial, Fiend, and Great Old One. On the right we have Archfey, Fiend, Great Old One, and Hexblade, with an asterisk. Now, Celestial, it's a Xanathar subclass. It was changed. But they didn't really change much, and I will also say one thing didn't change, which needed to be changed, because they forgot to remove the ability to stack the bonus of their 6th level feature with Agonizing Blast, which is kind of stupid. But, yeah. Hexblade, though. I have wanted this subclass reworked forever, because it's a mistake. As good as it is a design mess, and it's just a mistake, because in current D&D, it has a very parasitic relationship with Pact of the Blade, as it is the only way to play Pact of the Blade effectively. And without Pact of the Blade, you can't really get the most out of being Hexblade. It's just how it is currently. Thus, it needs a rework. And let's not forget, Pact of the Blade itself is changing. So, with that, and they're adding the Hex Warrior part, where it's like, yeah, it's one of the main things that made it Hex Blade is getting moved to base Pact of the Blade. And I think the armor proficiencies should also be moved to base Pact of the Blade, but Pact of Moons have been a whole mess, especially with the new UA, where they threw away literally the one good thing of the previous version, which is dumb, but here at least it's like, yeah, this one, Hexblade needs a rework, period. And just to make it something different, remove the blade part. Let it be a Shadow Lord patron or something. Just a generic Shadowfell patron that fills a broader sphere, while also severing it from Pact of the Blade and Pact of the Blade from it, so that the two can exist separately and both can be combined with any patron or Pact Moon according to what they are. So this is my number one most needed change. And for whatever reason, they skipped it, kind of ignoring the fact that it needs a change. And I get it's popular, but that's part of the problem, where what makes it popular, even though it is popular, it needs a rework, because it's got the blade stuff. So basically just new spell list, removed proficiencies, and then a second feature to replace Hex Warrior, probably. Something that's always on, basically, even if you don't have a curse active. But that's Warlock. And last and probably least, Wizard. Abjure, Diviner, Evoker, Illusionist. Abjure, Diviner, Evoker, Illusionist. It's unchanged, because of course it's not. But actually, before I forget, there is an addendum to Great Old One that I missed, which was with Create Thrall. It didn't remove the material cost, so you have a 400 gold piece feature. Yeah, so you have a feature tax where it's like you have to pay 400 gold pieces just to use it, so that could probably be removed. It would be very much appreciated, because, yeah, nobody wants to pay 400 gold pieces just to use their class feature. But that's just an awkward one. But with that, so this has been my thoughts on One D&D's subclass list and my critiques to it. Even if one is probably never happening, but I can dream. But without further ado, I hope you all enjoyed this, and if you want more stuff similar to this, I will continue doing One D&D stuff, as well as some stuff for other projects soon. So hopefully next Friday I get around to doing that. Hopefully, being the keyword. So like and subscribe to keep in tune with that. But also, I wouldn't mind if you give any feedback or just any comments that are applicable to this video down below. Be respectful, of course. And any ideas of what you would have liked to see that's different from mine. But without further ado, I'll see y'all next time! Halo Zoo, out!